Welcome back to English Everyday Podcast, the podcast that helps you break down language barriers and speak English with confidence. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Mike. Today we're tackling a common stumbling block for many English learners, the mental translation trap. That's right, Sarah. You know, when you're speaking and you're thinking in your native language, then translating each word, each phrase into English before you say it, it slows you down, makes you sound unnatural, and can lead to all sorts of errors.
Yes, it's like having a really slow, inefficient interpreter in your head, and it's exhausting. The goal is to get to a point where you're thinking directly in English, or at least reducing that translation step as much as possible.
Exactly. So, how do we do it? What are the practical steps learners can take?
Let's start with the foundation. Immersion is key, but I don't necessarily mean moving to an English-speaking country. It's about creating an English-speaking environment for yourself, wherever you are.
How can someone do that without physically being in an English speaking country?
It's about intentional exposure. Change the language settings on your phone, your computer, your social media. Watch movies and TV shows in English. Listen to podcasts like ours, even if you don't understand every single word at first. Read books, articles, news in English. The more you expose yourself to the language in its natural context, the more your brain starts to absorb it.
And when you're consuming this content, are you suggesting people try to understand it without translating?
That's the goal. Initially, you might need to look up a few words, but try to infer meaning from context. If you're watching a show and a character says something you don't understand, see if the surrounding dialogue or the action can give you a clue. Don't stop the video every time you hit a new word. Let it flow.
That's a great point. It's about accepting that you won't understand everything immediately. It's a process. What about active practice? What can people do to actively break the translation habit?
Speaking, 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 even if it's just to yourself. Narrate your day in English. When you're cooking, describe what you're doing out loud. When you're walking, describe what you see. It feels a bit silly at first, but it forces you to retrieve vocabulary and construct sentences on the fly without that intermediary translation step.
So instead of thinking, I need to make dinner, and then mentally jumping through another language before saying it, you just think the idea, the concept of making dinner, and immediately say, I need to make dinner.
Exactly. It's about bypassing that little translation software in your brain.
Right. And one way to practice that is to describe simple things around you directly in English. For example, when you see a red apple, don't label it in another language first. Just look at it and think, red apple.
It's about building those direct associations between the English word and the concept, image, or action, rather than going through your native language.
Exactly. And this applies to grammar too. Instead of translating grammatical structures from your native language, try to learn English grammar in context. When you encounter a new structure, pay attention to how it's used in different sentences. Try to internalize the patterns rather than trying to map them directly onto your native language's rules.
That's a really important distinction. Many learners try to apply their native language's grammar rules to English, and that's a recipe for disaster.
It is. So, when you're listening or reading, pay attention to sentence structure. Notice how verbs are used, how prepositions connect ideas. Try to mimic those structures in your own speaking and writing.
What about vocabulary building? How can we avoid the translation trap there?
Instead of memorizing long word lists, try to learn words in context, in real phrases or sentences. For example, if you're using flashcards, don't write the translation. On one side, write a sentence like, I live in a big house, and on the other side, just put the word house.
Or even better, use a picture of a house. That way, your brain connects the image and the idea, not another language.
The idea is to create a direct link between the English word and its meaning or its visual representation. And when you encounter a new word, try to find its definition in English rather than just its translation.
That's a great tip. Using an English dictionary can be a game changer. It forces you to engage with English definitions, which are usually simpler than you think, and it exposes you to more English vocabulary in the process.
Absolutely. And it also helps you understand nuances. A direct translation might not capture the full meaning or connotation of a word.
Another strategy is to focus on chunks of language, or collocations. These are words that naturally go together. For example, make a mistake, not do a mistake. Or heavy rain, not strong rain. When you learn these chunks, you're essentially memorizing prefabricated sentences or phrases that sound natural to native speakers. This bypasses the need to translate individual words and then try to piece them together grammatically. So instead of thinking, I did a mistake, you're learning I made a mistake as a single unit.
Exactly. And the more of these chunks you have in your active vocabulary, the smoother and more fluent you'll become.
Let's talk about mistakes. Many learners are afraid of making mistakes, and that fear can actually reinforce the translation habit because they're trying to be perfectly accurate.
That's a huge point, Sarah. Mistakes are not the enemy. They are learning opportunities. If you're so focused on not making mistakes that you're not speaking, you're not progressing. So, embrace the imperfection. Try to communicate your message even if it's not perfect. Native speakers make mistakes too, and often they can understand you even with errors. And when you do make a mistake and someone corrects you or you realize it yourself, see it as a chance to learn that chunk or that grammatical structure correctly.
Yes, don't get discouraged. It's part of the process. Another thing that can help is to consciously try to use new vocabulary and grammar you've learned in your conversations, even if it feels a little forced at first. Try to integrate those new pieces into your speaking. This helps to solidify them and makes them part of your active repertoire, rather than just passive knowledge.
And if you're in a situation where you can't find the right English word, what's a good strategy?
Don't just give up, try to describe it. Use circumlocution. For example, if you can't remember the word teapot, you could say, it's a thing you use to make tea. It has a handle and a spout. This not only helps you communicate your idea, but also reinforces your ability to think on your feet and express yourself even when you're missing a specific word.
That's a great skill to develop. It shows flexibility and resourcefulness. So, to recap, we've talked about creating an immersive environment, consuming English content without constant translation,
Speaking to yourself and narrating your day, building direct associations between English words and concepts,
learning grammar in context and focusing on patterns, using English dictionaries,
learning vocabulary in chunks and collocations, embracing mistakes as learning opportunities.
actively using new language, and using circumlocution when you can't find the exact word.
That's a solid toolkit for anyone looking to break free from the translation trap. It's not an overnight fix, of course. It requires consistent effort and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone. It's a journey. But by implementing these strategies, you'll find your thinking becoming more fluid, your speech becoming more natural, and your overall English fluency will skyrocket.
So start small. Pick one or two of these tips and focus on them this week. See how it feels. And remember, the goal is communication, not perfection. So get out there and start speaking.
That's all the time we have for today on English Everyday Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Join us next time for more tips and tricks to help you master the English language. And don't forget to follow the podcast and turn on the notifications so you'll never miss a new one.